Pay up or get lost! Dad yelled furiously when I refused to cover his piling bills, so I chose peace. 2 days later, a lawyer called with news that changed everything. I should have seen it coming. The yelling, the accusations, the slam of his fist on the kitchen table. It wasn't the first time. But something about the way he barked that ultimatum. Pay up or get lost! Like I was some tenant who'd missed rent, not his son, was different this time. Maybe because, for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel fear. I felt calm. That night was colder than most. We were in the middle of February, and the draft from the window I'd begged him to fix for years kept pushing the blinds just enough to remind me that even the walls were tired of this routine. He was standing there, face red, beer on his breath, holding up a pile of overdue bills like they were some kind of proof of my failure. You gonna let your old man go hungry? He growled. I didn't answer. I just stared at him, really stared. The sag in his shoulders, the lines of entitlement etched deeper than his wrinkles, the same pitiful scowl I'd grown up watching when things didn't go his way. The same scowl my mother saw the day she left, and never came back. I was 28. I had my own life, or at least I was trying to. But over the years, piece by piece, I'd handed it over to this man. Covered his utility bills, his rent, his credit card debt. Watched my own dreams shrivel in the corners of my mind while I played savior in a home that never felt like mine. And every time I couldn't afford to give more? You're just like your mother, he'd say. Selfish. Weak. But that night, when he threw the water bill on the floor and screamed that if I didn't want to help, I could pack up and go, I didn't argue. I didn't beg for understanding. I grabbed my coat, walked to the door, and said, Okay. Just okay. His eyes widened like he hadn't expected me to call his bluff. But I didn't wait for a response. I walked out into the cold, into the dark, into the unfamiliar feeling of choosing myself. And for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. I had no idea what was waiting 2 days later. A phone call from a lawyer. A name I hadn't heard in years, James Whitlow, my grandfather. The one my father called a snake. The one who vanished from our lives when I was just a kid. The one I was told never wanted anything to do with us. Apparently, that wasn't true. Not even close. The voicemail came while I was standing in line for a coffee I didn't even want. I was still trying to figure out how to tell my boss I might need to take time off, not because I was sick or had a family emergency, but because I had nowhere to go. I was crashing at a friend's place, living out of my car between shifts, pretending I was just reorganizing my living situation. The message was short, polite, and confusing as hell. Mr. Whitlow, my name is Robert Mathis. I'm an attorney representing the estate of your grandfather, James Whitlow. Please contact me at your earliest convenience. I stared at my phone, brows furrowed. My grandfather? I thought he was dead. Or if not dead, then long gone and buried under the weight of whatever story my father had crafted. The man was never talked about, and when I did ask as a kid, all I got were vague answers and that classic dismissive grunt. He's not part of our life. But apparently he had been. Just not my life. When I called the number back, the voice on the other end was calm, professional, and startlingly kind. Mr. Whitlow, he said, I've been trying to track you down for weeks. Your grandfather passed away a month ago. His estate is considerable. And he left everything to you. I laughed. Actually laughed. I think you've got the wrong guy, I said. He cut off my father. Why would he leave me anything? The lawyer paused, like he was used to hearing that. That's explained in the letter he wrote. It's addressed to you directly. Wait, he knew me? He knew of you, the lawyer replied. More than you think. The will is clear. You're the sole heir. I stood there, heart pounding in my chest as he began to list the assets. A fully paid-off 2-story house in a quiet town outside of Portland. A modest investment portfolio. Enough to live comfortably if you manage it well, he said. And the letter. Always the letter. It's important you read it, the lawyer said. He wanted you to understand the why. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I drove up the next morning to meet the lawyer in person. His office smelled like old wood and expensive paper, and when he slid the envelope across the table, my hands shook. It was addressed in neat, cursive handwriting I didn't recognize, but it still felt oddly familiar. To my grandson, Henry Whitlow. I'm sorry it took me this long. I didn't know it then, but that letter was going to blow open the truth about my family in a way I wasn't ready for. And once I read it, there was no going back. I waited until I was back in the car to open it. Something about that envelope felt heavier than its weight. Like it was holding more than just words, it was holding explanations, regrets, maybe even redemption. Or maybe none of that. The seal cracked like it had been waiting years to be broken. Inside was a single sheet of thick paper, yellowed at the edges, handwritten in black ink that had bled a little with time. The handwriting was neat. Almost too neat. Like he'd rewritten it more than once before settling on this final draft. Henry, it began. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and that I chose to do in death what I failed to do in life, speak directly to you. You don't know me. But I've known of you for years. I felt my throat tighten. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until I forced myself to exhale. Your father and I, we parted ways long ago. He'd tell you I was controlling. Cold. Maybe worse. And maybe I was. But the truth is harder than that. Your father was 16 the first time I caught him stealing from me. 21 when I covered up a crime he swore was a misunderstanding. I spent years bailing him out, financially, legally, emotionally. And when I finally said no, he disappeared. Took your mother and cut me off completely. And he told anyone who would listen that I abandoned him. I gripped the edge of the letter tighter. The wind outside rattled through the trees, but in the car, everything was still. You were just a boy. I thought, if I stayed away, maybe he'd grow up. Maybe he'd be better for you than I ever was for him. But then I started hearing things. Whispers, stories. A friend of mine ran into you years back. You were working a job at a gas station. Said you were polite, tired, and wearing boots with holes in them. And I knew. The cycle had started again. That line hit me hard. I hadn't even remembered the interaction. But now I could feel it, like some invisible string had always been tugging at my life from behind the scenes. I didn't know how to step in. Not after so long. But I could leave you something. A way out. A clean break. You deserve more than to be the next link in a chain of takers and manipulators. You deserve peace. And then, one last line, underlined in the same ink. Break the cycle, Henry. Take this gift and disappear. No explanations. No apologies. Just go live a life that's yours. That was it. No flowery goodbye. No I love you. Just a passing of the torch. A plea from a man who had watched his own son rot from the inside out, and hoped his grandson might still have a shot at something better. I sat there for a long time, staring at that letter, the paper trembling slightly in my grip. It was like someone had reached through time and pulled a blindfold off my face. The verbal abuse, the financial control, the guilt trips, the emotional blackmail, all the things my father had done to me, were exactly what his father had endured before me. And suddenly, I knew exactly what I had to do. I didn't drive back to the place I'd been crashing at. I didn't text anyone to say where I was. I just sat in that rental car, in a quiet parking lot outside the lawyer's office, staring out at the overcast sky, letting it sink in. I was free. Not metaphorically. Not someday. Not if I got a raise or if I got lucky. Right now. Right here. I had the means. I had the letter. And for the first time in my life, I had permission, maybe even a responsibility, to choose myself. It wasn't just about walking away from my father. I'd done that before. Plenty of people have. Gone no contact. And then kept the line cracked open for birthdays or guilt. I didn't want that. I wanted something deeper. Something final. I wanted to disappear. No goodbye. No second guessing. Just a clean break from every version of me that ever flinched when my phone buzzed. I made a list. Not a dramatic, Hollywood-style checklist. Just a scribble on a fast food napkin. Cancel all automatic payments linked to Dad's accounts. Change my phone number. Close my bank account and transfer the funds. Sell the beat-up car I'd been driving. Burn whatever bridges needed burning. The house my grandfather left was in a different state. I'd only seen pictures of it on the lawyer's iPad, a modest two-bedroom tucked behind tall trees, with a porch that looked like it was built for thinking. Quiet. Private. Perfect. The lawyer had said I could take possession immediately. So that's exactly what I did. I left the parking lot, drove straight to a bank to finalize the account transfer, and then checked into a cheap motel for the night with nothing but a small duffel bag and my grandfather's letter folded in my coat pocket. No more apartment. No more forwarding address. I texted my landlord to say I wouldn't be renewing the lease, dropped my keys in the mailbox, and walked away without looking back. I even changed my name, just a middle name swap, nothing that would raise flags. Just enough that if anyone went looking, they'd hit dead ends. I didn't want revenge. I didn't need closure. I wanted silence. And slowly, I began to realize that maybe peace isn't a reward. Maybe it's a decision. The drive to Oregon took most of a day. I passed through towns with names I'd never remember and landscapes that didn't feel real until I was already past them. Somewhere between state lines and empty gas stations, it hit me. No one knew where I was. No one was calling. No one was demanding. For once, I wasn't bracing for the next blow. When I pulled up to the house, I didn't even get out right away. I just sat there, watching it through the windshield. It was smaller than I expected. Weathered. The kind of place you imagine someone living in while they write a novel they never finish. But it was quiet, and it was mine. I finally stepped out, gravel crunching beneath my boots. The air smelled like pine and rain-soaked dirt. I walked up the porch steps slowly, half expecting someone to open the door and ask what I was doing there. But no one came. Inside it was untouched. Clean, but lived in. A kettle still sat on the stove. A plaid jacket hung on the wall by the front door. Like my grandfather had just stepped out for groceries and never came back. There was a photo on the mantel, black and white, slightly faded. Him, holding a boy. A boy that looked a little like me. My throat tightened. I didn't know where this road would take me. But I knew one thing with certainty. I wasn't going back. The first night in the house, I didn't sleep much. Not because I was anxious, but because the silence was so complete. No traffic outside. No pipes rattling. No yelling from the other room. Just the hum of wind weaving through trees and the occasional creak of the old floorboards settling under time. It felt like the house was breathing. In the morning, I made coffee in a chipped mug I found in the cabinet. There were still groceries in the pantry, canned soups, oatmeal, a few jars of pickles. Everything had been left in order, like my grandfather expected someone to come live here eventually. I started exploring. In the hallway closet, I found a box labeled, "For Henry," in thick black marker. No envelope this time, no dramatic moment. Just a cardboard box, taped shut, waiting quietly. Inside, a bundle of old photographs, most of them black and white. A pair of leather gloves that looked barely worn. A small notebook with the initials, J.W., etched into the cover. And at the bottom, a metal tin with a key inside. The notebook was filled with dates, memories, and single-sentence reflections, many of them about my father. Told Richard no again. He hasn't changed. Still thinks love is a currency. Saw Henry at the station. Didn't say hello? He looked tired. Like me, when I was younger. I sat there reading until the light shifted through the windows. This man, my grandfather, had been watching my life unfold from a distance. And every entry, every word, felt like it had been written with equal parts regret and hope. The key? I didn't know what it opened yet. But something told me I'd find out soon. And that whatever door it belonged to, it wasn't just physical. It wasn't obvious at first. I walked through the house that afternoon, key in hand, testing it on everything that looked old enough to hide something, closets, cabinets, even the shed out back. Nothing. It wasn't until I opened the desk in the study that I noticed it. A bottom drawer that didn't budge. No handle. No visible lock. But there was a tiny notch, barely visible under the wood paneling. I slid the key in. It turned with a soft click, like a sigh after holding its breath for years. Inside was a single manila folder, thick with papers, bound by a brittle rubber band. Taped to the front was a note, written in the same careful handwriting as the letter. If you must know everything, start here. But be sure you really want to. I hesitated. For a moment, I considered just shutting the drawer and walking away. Maybe some ghost should stay buried. But I couldn't. Not anymore. I peeled back the band. Inside. Police reports. Bank statements. Letters with my father's name on them, some opened, some returned. A printed email chain with the subject line, loan forgery, final notice. The deeper I went, the clearer the picture became. My father hadn't just been a taker. He had stolen. Lied. Forged signatures, including my grandfather's. There were charges once, years ago. Quietly settled. Paid off. The kind of thing a father might do for his son, once. Maybe twice. But not forever. And there, at the bottom of the stack, was the final letter my grandfather ever sent my father. Richard, I tried to help you. I gave you chances. You took each one and used it to dig deeper. I can't do it anymore. Not for you. Not for Henry. If you want to destroy yourself, I can't stop you. But I won't let you destroy him too. The paper was wrinkled, smudged at the corner like it had been gripped too tightly. Maybe my dad had read it. Maybe he'd thrown it in anger. Maybe he never opened it at all. I sat back in the creaky office chair and stared at the walls of the house. The quiet no longer felt empty. It felt earned. I made the last phone call on a Tuesday morning. A quiet, gray morning, the kind that looks like it might rain but never does. I sat at the old kitchen table, the For Henry box beside me, my phone in hand. One final call. Not to my father. Not to explain or confront or beg. To the bank. I closed the joint account we'd once shared. The one I opened years ago, thinking it made things easier. Back when I believed that helping him, fixing him, was how you earned love. After that, I changed the last of my online info. New email. New number. A burner phone for emergencies, nothing linked to the old me. Even my old landlord didn't have it. Everything from my old life, credit cards, gym memberships, even my grocery store loyalty card, I let it all go. Deleted. Erased. And I was still waiting for the guilt to show up. But it never did. I thought I'd feel haunted by it. Like I was abandoning something. But the truth? I'd been the one abandoned over and over again. I was just finally acknowledging it. That afternoon, I stood at the end of the dirt driveway and looked out at the winding road. No cars. No noise. Just trees and sky and the steady hum of wind in the leaves. And for the first time, I didn't check my phone. I didn't wonder who might be trying to reach me. Because no one was. And I didn't need them to. It had been nearly 3 weeks since I moved into the house, and the days had taken on a rhythm I'd never known before. Slow. Simple. Good. I'd wake early, walk the back trails through the woods, make breakfast, and chip away at the long list of small repairs around the house. Nothing urgent. Nothing overwhelming. Just creaky stairs, a sticky window, a porch board that wobbled. I didn't talk to anyone. Didn't post. Didn't scroll. I read books that had been collecting dust in the study. I started sketching again, something I hadn't done since high school. I even found a half-used guitar in the attic and tuned it slowly over a few afternoons, plucking strings that hummed in the quiet air like a language I'd forgotten how to speak. It was peace, yes. But peace can be so quiet it echoes. Then one afternoon, someone knocked on the front door. I froze. Not because I was scared, but because I hadn't heard that sound in weeks. It felt foreign. Out of place. Like a dream bleeding into reality. I opened the door cautiously, unsure of what, or who, I'd find. It was an older woman. Probably late 60s. Long gray braid down one shoulder, heavy wool sweater, arms tucked around a pie tin. "You must be James's grandson," she said. Her voice was gentle, but it held a certainty that told me she hadn't come here by mistake. "I'm Nora. Lived just down the road for the last 30 years. I used to bring your grandfather groceries in the winter." I nodded, unsure what to say. She smiled and offered the pie tin. "Peach. Thought you might be tired of canned soup." I took it slowly. Still warm. She didn't press. Didn't ask why I was here or where I came from. She just looked around the porch, nodded at the repairs I'd made, and said, "He'd be glad someone's living here again." Then she turned to leave, paused at the bottom step, and added, "He talked about you. Not much. But enough." I stood there for a long time after she left, the pie cooling in my hands. Someone knew him. And by extension knew me, in a way. He hadn't erased me. He hadn't forgotten. He just waited, like the house, like the letter, for the right moment to reach across the silence. That night, I sliced a piece of the pie, sat on the porch under a sky full of stars, and played a few soft chords on the old guitar. And for the first time since I'd arrived, I didn't feel alone. Sometimes I still think about calling him. Not to reconnect. Not to forgive. Just to say, I made it. But I don't. Because that would mean opening the door again. And some doors are better left shut. The truth is, I didn't disappear to punish anyone. I disappeared to find out who I was when no one was telling me I wasn't enough. And now? Now I wake up without dread in my chest. I eat meals without budgeting someone else's debt in my head. I live in a house built with silence, yes, but also intention. A place where I get to choose what stays and what goes.